victory and nothing less. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu re-emphasized his country's commitment to crush Hamas. This came after an ambush that killed 10 Israeli soldiers.
The White House says it's not wavering in its support for Israel. And yesterday, the president met with the families of American hostages. As Chris Mitchell reports, they're hoping for a Christmas miracle.
After President Biden's comments about a change in Israel's government, the White House declared that despite its concerns, U.S. support for Israel is not diminished.
The president yesterday reflected the reality of global opinion, which also matters. Our support for Israel is not diminished. But we have had concerns, and we have expressed those concerns about the prosecution of this military campaign, even while acknowledging that it's Hamas that started this, and it's Hamas that is continuing it.
Israel's defense minister also recognized the differences with the U.S., but believes the two nations will continue to work together.
That's the key and the base. They want our success, and we are aware we must do so while taking their needs into account and without giving up on the goals of the war.
The IDF says 70 Hamas gunmen surrendered to Israeli troops at a hospital in northern Gaza. In one of the IDF's bloodiest days in Gaza Tuesday, 10 Israeli soldiers, including several commanders, died in a Hamas ambush.
Yesterday we had a very difficult day, and every day we have precious boys who fall. The true heroes of Israel. My heart and our hearts go up to both the fallen and the families. We know their lives have changed, and with that I want to say in the clearest way what I just said to the commander in the field. We continue to the end. Nothing will stop us. We will go to the end, to victory, no less than that.
With the progress in the field and the surrender of hundreds of Hamas fighters, Netanyahu says he believes Hamas is starting to break. However, in the West Bank, a wartime opinion poll released Wednesday showed Palestinian support for Hamas is rising. The poll also revealed 90% say Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas should resign. This undermines the U.S. goal of having the PA rule Gaza after the war. On Wednesday, families of Americans taken hostage by Hamas met with Biden at the White House. They expressed thanks to the president and hope that they might soon be reunited with their loved ones.
It was a terrific meeting and conversation. I think we all came away feeling that as families of hostages, of American Israeli hostages, which are 8 out of a total of 138 hostages, we felt that, and we felt before, and we were only reinforced in seeing and believing that we could have no better friend in Washington or in the White House than President Biden himself and his administration.
We love a Christmas miracle. We would love all of our loved ones to come back and be with us for Christmas. So when you talk about the Pope, our hope is that he and others like himself will influence these people in the Middle East that are all actors in this part of getting these hostages out.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Let us continue to put pressure on Hamas. That's where the pressure properly belongs. They're the ones that started this. It was a horrific attack, and Israel is justified in defending itself and pursuing this to the end. Hamas has to stop. They have to unconditionally surrender. They have to release all of their hostages. They have to give up their arms, and they need to surrender. Well, the Netanyahu government is facing internal criticism over the October 7th attacks. New reports indicate that Israeli intelligence officials had advanced knowledge of the plan, and they dismissed it as unrealistic. Chuck Holton reports from Jerusalem on this critical failure.
October 7th, Hamas launched an attack resulting in 1,200 fatalities, marking a significant oversight by Israeli intelligence. Despite having a detailed 40-page operation plan named Jericho Wall, according to the New York Times, Israeli authorities underestimated Hamas's capabilities, dismissing their plans as overly ambitious.
Obviously, this is the worst intelligence failure in the history of the state of Israel. It's one of the worst intelligence failures, it seems, in the history of modern warfare, humanity, or states. And obviously, there will be an accounting held. But right now, Israel seems across the board overwhelmingly, sure, there are political pressures and their voices, but overall seems to be united in the understanding that right now there is an existential enemy outside trying to destroy the people of Israel, the state of Israel, the Jews.
The attack reportedly mirrored Hamas's strategic plan, a combination of rocket barrages and drones aimed at crippling security systems, along with gunmen using diverse transport methods, successfully breached Israeli defenses.
Any objective listener or observer is going to agree that, yeah, it was an intelligence failure, that the enemy could plan and organize that many thousands of fighters to breach in 30 different breach points, come through the fence, and do that kind of damage. However, yes, intelligence services collect a lot of intelligence, and it's hard to determine what is perfect and accurate intelligence versus what is conjecture.
But this isn't the first time Israel has had to overcome these challenges.
The Israelis have a long history of overestimating their capabilities against their enemies and underestimating the threat when it comes to the Arabs specifically. In both the 1967 and the 1973 wars, the Israelis almost lost their country because they didn't pay attention to the warning signs that were everywhere. And that should have served as a lesson in this war with Hamas. But unfortunately, they fell prey to the same hubris this time as well.
So yes, there might have been indications, warnings a year before. The fact is, we know this because the players involved have said so.
I had some operations orders translated. They were done by people who were Syrian, by Egyptians, and by people in the UAE. And every single one of those guys said, this operations order is the way Persian people talk. So I think a lot of this might have been planned in Iran.
The aftermath of the attack raises critical concerns in how Israel identifies and reacts to credible threats.
Israel knew about some of this information, but they considered it aspirational. When you think about it, this seemed like such an off-the-wall attack. You're using hang gliders and so on. Who would have thought of that? And who wants to be the guy that puts their career on the line and says, hey, guess what? Qassam is going to attack with hang gliders.
Before they spend any effort on deciding who to blame, however, Israel needs to win the war.
It has to go way past that. And, contra the pressure coming up from the world to create a state governed by the Palestinian Authority, which is no less genocidal, no less evil than Hamas, there needs to be a complete change in how Israel relates to those hostile populations that surround it.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, as the story is playing, I thought of our own intelligence failure back at 9/11, where there seemed to be chatter, there seemed to be discussion, but it just seemed absolutely outrageous that people could commandeer airplanes and fly them into buildings. So you look at this and say, from a human standpoint, you can understand why you would think it was aspirational. This was just so outlandish that they didn't think it was possible. At the same time, you have to give it credibility. And so what's going to happen in this internal investigation, and where's Israel going to go with this? The larger question, and it is a much larger question, did America win 9/11? Did we win the war in Afghanistan? Did we win the war in Iraq? Have we won the war against radical terrorism? I think the answer quite clearly is no, we haven't. And so Israel can win the battle against Hamas, but has it won the peace? And what's it going to take to win the peace? To change the ideology that Palestinians are raised with, that Israel should be removed from the map, and this chant from the river to the sea. What's it going to take, and how many generations is it going to take to win the peace? And in that, what needs to be dismantled that is currently funding it? We can look at funds coming from Iran, but what about funds coming from the UN? What about funds coming from the United States of America to prop up UNRWA, to prop up the Palestinian Authority, allow them to continue to train their children and their children's children in terrorism? UNRWA had terrorists on salary. UNRWA employees were holding hostages. That means UNRWA should stop too, and we should stop funding it.